Welcome to our deep dive today, where we're going to be looking at the challenges of dating as a single mother. And, we're really going to be focusing on these firsthand experiences that we've gathered that highlight some of the societal judgments and also some of the internal struggles that can arise when, a single mom starts to think about, you know, romance and how that fits into her life alongside raising kids. So we'll be exploring those initial hurdles that women face, even just the idea of dating, considering all the other things they're already balancing, like, work and childcare and just, maintaining stability in their life. And of course, we'll also be diving into those often negative perceptions they encounter from, well, really from everyone.
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, one of the biggest things that so many single mothers have talked about is that first obstacle of just, can they even allow themselves to think about dating? It can feel really overwhelming, right? I mean, think about it.
They're juggling work, childcare, making sure there's food on the table, a roof over their heads. And then on top of it all, society seems to often say that, hey, being a mom means, giving up any right to, well, to want a romantic connection. It's like there's this unspoken rule that motherhood should inherently exclude any pursuit of a relationship.
Yeah.
And that judgment, it really comes out in so many different ways. But really at its core, it boils down to this disapproval of a woman wanting companionship or, intimacy outside of being a mom. It's as if their whole identity is supposed to be wrapped up in their children, which, let's be real, that's incredibly limiting. And what's interesting is that this societal pressure, this judgment, it starts even before a single mom even dips her toe into the dating pool. Just the thought of, maybe making a dating profile or, saying yes to going out with friends, it can sometimes be met with this criticism, either really subtle or, sometimes just right out in the open. And it all comes back to this assumption, right? That a mom's time and energy, it belongs solely to her kids, period. But, we kind of forget that a parent's well-being, and I mean their emotional and social well-being too, that actually can really positively affect their ability to be a good parent. So to say that motherhood and wanting a romantic relationship are somehow mutually exclusive, well, that's just setting an unfair and unrealistic expectation, isn't it? It's like we're putting these women in a double bind where their needs are always taking a back seat. And then, of course, you have the online dating world, which, well, it can really amplify all those existing biases. When a single mom decides to put single mom in her profile, it's like this label that can unfortunately trigger all sorts of assumptions and, just preconceived notions from potential partners. There are those who see that label and they think, okay, this means I'm expected to be a dad right away, even if we're just getting to know each other. They miss the point that, for a lot of single mothers, it's really about connecting with another adult, finding companionship and, maybe even romance, not necessarily looking for a co-parent right from the first hello. And, that rush to judgment, it can be so disheartening. It just throws up another barrier to actually forming a genuine connection. It's almost as if there's this cloud of suspicion, right? Like even suggesting something as simple as meeting for coffee can be misinterpreted when you're a single mom. Some people would jump to conclusions thinking, oh, she must be looking for financial support or, a father figure for her kids. And, that kind of unfair perspective, it puts this extra weight on every interaction. Suddenly, the most innocent gesture or suggestion is loaded with all these assumptions about her motives. It's like she's constantly being scrutinized and judged, and her intentions are always being twisted to fit this narrow view of what a single mother should or shouldn't be doing. It just makes the whole idea of finding connection and, maybe even love so much more complicated than it needs to be. And then there's the moment when kids inevitably come up on a date, which should be a natural part of getting to know someone. But for a lot of single moms, it feels less like a normal progression and more like, an instant evaluation. It's like the potential partner isn't just sizing her up, but they're also thinking about how they would fit into her family. And while, yeah, of course, kids are a huge part of her life and it's going to come up eventually, having those conversations so early on can feel more like a job interview for a co-parent instead of, just two people exploring a connection and seeing if they vibe. It's like all this pressure gets piled on, and it can be really overwhelming for both people. And honestly, navigating conversations and answering questions on a date, it can be really awkward for single moms. Almost every single one of them has talked about the inevitable question, what about your child's father? And that question, it often feels so intrusive. It forces her to sum up what might be a really complex and personal history to someone she barely knows. And while, sure, maybe the other person is just curious, but that question instantly shifts the focus away from the two of them and onto her past relationships and all the complicated family dynamics. It creates this uncomfortable atmosphere, and sometimes it can even bring up some heavy emotions.
It's asking for a level of vulnerability that just might not feel safe or appropriate at that point in time. And then there's this other question that comes up a lot, and it really shows how much people don't get it. They ask, do you think you can date again after having kids? It's like they think parenthood is this thing you might or might not recover from, in terms of being able to have a relationship. But the thing is, for single mom, her kids are a part of her life, period. It's not about going back to how things were before. It's about finding love and connection within the reality of her life as it is now. That question just highlights how much society sees motherhood as this all-consuming identity and fails to recognize that, hey, single moms are still individuals with their own needs and desires. Now, let's not forget the logistics, because, oh boy, the logistics of dating as a single mom can be a whole other beast. Scheduling dates and figuring out childcare, that's a lot. And potential partners might not always grasp how complicated and, expensive it can be to find someone reliable to watch the kids.
They might have this expectation that she can just drop everything and be spontaneous, which, let's be real, that's just not how it works. And when those expectations don't match up with reality, well, it can lead to frustration and miscommunication on both sides, which just adds another layer of difficulty to an already complex situation. And it's not just potential partners who are judging. Single mothers often face criticism from other moms, even within their own communities. Imagine going to a PTA meeting or a play date and being judged for wanting to have a life outside of your kids. It's like there's this unspoken rule that single moms aren't allowed to have fun or pursue their own interests. And this kind of judgment, coming from other mothers, it can be especially hurtful. You'd think they would be the ones to understand, but sometimes it feels like they're the quickest to judge. Instead of offering support, they create this sense of isolation, like you're betraying some kind of sacred motherhood code by wanting some personal fulfillment. All this external criticism can lead to a lot of internal pressure. Single mothers might feel like they have to constantly apologize for wanting companionship or, just a little bit of time for themselves. It's like they feel guilty for wanting anything beyond being a mom. And this internal conflict, it can be exhausting. It's this constant battle between what they need and what they feel they're supposed to be. It's no wonder so many single moms end up feeling ashamed for simply having desires outside of their children. But here's the thing. Being a mom is just one part of who a woman is. It doesn't erase her individuality or her need for connection, intimacy, and just feeling appreciated. Those desires are part of being human, and they don't just vanish when you become a parent. So for single moms out there, know this. It is absolutely okay to want a relationship. It's healthy, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Those judgments that you're facing, they're often based on outdated ideas about what a mother should be. You are allowed to be a mother and a woman with your own needs and desires. You're a whole person, and you deserve happiness. So in this deep dive, we've really shed light on the judgments that single moms face when they try to date. And the stories we've shared, they really emphasize how important self-acceptance is. You have to reject those societal pressures that tell you you're not allowed to want more. The takeaway here is this. You do not have to apologize for wanting a fulfilling relationship. And as we wrap up, I want you to think about the expectations that society puts on parents, especially mothers. How do those expectations affect their well-being? And how do they get in the way of forming meaningful relationships?